Well, welcome in the show. I'm Tony Altieri. That is Riku Mukherjee. And this is what losers look like, Rick. Like you and I. Supreme, total disasters. I can't, I was laughing off air, like before we got on. Like, I can't remember a worse beating the way that it went down, probably for both of us, that I've ever experienced in the DFS world as I did this last Sunday.
Yeah, it was more betting for me than DFS. DFS, I was kind of treading water all week. I'm more angry that the players that I absolutely love, like my three favorite guys to play on DFS, were at the top of the leaderboard, and I didn't have them in the same lineup together, which you did. And unfortunately for you, you had that awesome nut lineup, and you just, instead of playing JT, you played John Rahm, which cost you the chance to ship attorney. But I think right now your hat pretty much tells the story. We love this game, but at times it really, really sucks. And yesterday was I'll be honest with you, I had trouble sleeping last night after that. Like I dozed off a little bit after the tournament, and then I woke up and I felt like I was having a nightmare of that Mito tee shot on 18, man. Like for me, I had big tickets on Cam Young, Will Zalatoris, Mito, and I thought for sure I was going to cash one of those tickets. I did not think any chance in hell that JT was going to come back and win. I thought, if anything, it was going to be Fitzpatrick, who I like to be at the beginning of the week. But just one thing after another, Mito and then Wilsey losing in the playoffs. It was pretty brutal.
Yeah, I mean, I had mentioned to you, I had the FOMO bet that I had made. Wasn't on my card, but I just couldn't do it. I had to do it. I had to place the bet on Wilsey. Couldn't go if he won, not being part of that after betting him pretty much all year and talking about him on the show ad nauseum. So added him to the card. And then I added Cam Young live at like 38-1, I think, on Saturday, because I mean, the ball striking was immaculate. It was just the putting was up and down. And that's kind of what did him in on Sunday. But to your point, for me, it was the flip side. It was the DFS side. I had a lineup with Fitz, Fleetwood, Mito, Will Z, and Cam. But instead of, JT, I have Rahm. And at one point, that lineup was winning about 20K. And as basically everybody melted and JT kind of emerged from the pack, that's what did me in, because he was so heavily owned. As he started climbing up the leaderboard, because I didn't have him, everybody just started bypassing me. And I went all the way from first down to like 56th, which went from winning like 20K to winning basically $150. So, it's super tilting, but
yeah. And the funny thing is that we talk so much about AM PM waves and stuff like that. It would be a different story if Rahm was like in the morning wave and you wanted to play Rahm because he was in the morning wave, but he was in the bad draw too. And you literally picked the wrong guy in the bad draw instead of picking Rahm. And we talked about it last week. Like we were so heavy on Rahm. I cooled off on him a little bit because he was in the bad wave draw, and I went and played more AM PM guys last week. I still had some Rahm, but I definitely wasn't as heavy on him. But yeah, I mean, it's just what we talked about it in a tough course like this, where the winning score ended up being -5, right? The playoff was -5.
Yep.
I mean, who else would you want in that situation besides John Rahm? It just didn't work out that it was John Rahm. It just ended up being JT instead. So really brutal beat. I don't know what else to say, man. It was a nightmare. I mean, JT, I think I was just talking to Mike off before the show started. I think when he was on hole number 8, he had a 0.4 chance of winning the tournament. He was 8 shots back. He was 200-1 at that moment. And one thing happened after another, and the guys at the top crumbled. And he even said it. He was like, he looked at the leaderboard and he was like, none of these guys ahead of me have majors. None of these guys have been in winning contention at a major before. So he knew that even though he was really far behind, I think he just kind of knew that he had to get to a certain number, and there was a good chance that these guys could crumble ahead of him. And that's exactly what we saw.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a week of shoulda, woulda, coulda. I mean, my heart sank when Mito hit the ball on 18. I mean, I was like, it was so gutting, not only for me, but for you, obviously, too. Yeah. So, I mean, we had been, even the other thing, too, about it is the night before on Saturday, in the text string I had put out, I'm like, dude, there's massive, like, value in JT and Rory, because Rory was like 100-1 and JT was like 28 or 30-1 depending on where you were betting him. I'm like, dude, there's a ton of value there in both guys, and of course I didn't pull the trigger on both. JT ends up coming back, everybody melts, and it is what it is. This is the frustrating part of what we do on a weekly basis, but it also makes it fun, going through these things, riding the emotional waves. You and Mike got together. Unfortunately, I was unable to make it over to the house to watch the finish, but it was brutal, man. I mean, texting and going through it, like I literally felt sick to my stomach for a better part of about an hour and a half.
Yeah, and then the funny thing that you just mentioned, Rory, is that like not only did I have a Will Z, Mito, and Cam Young ticket, I also had a Rory ticket too. And then when he started off on fire on Sunday, I was like, oh my god, I have a fourth ticket in play here, and the only person that's going to ruin it for me today is Matt Fitzpatrick. And I don't know, man. Rory, he started off so hot. I think he got it to 3 or 4 under. Obviously, he didn't know it at the time, but I bet you, like, if he knew that -5 would have gotten into a playoff, he probably would have changed his playing a little bit, because I think he still like was trying too hard maybe a little bit at that point, and firing at too many pins, and just got a little careless and made some sloppy bogeys. So I think in his mind, when he was like -3 or -4, that he needed to get to like 7, maybe like 8 under or something like that. I don't think he realized that -5 could have potentially got him into a playoff. So it's just the luck of the draw there, I guess. Just if he was a little bit further behind in holes, like if he was teeing off a little bit later, maybe he could have seen the leaderboard shape up a little bit more, but he was so far out in front that he had no idea. So he just kept firing at flags. He played really well on the week. Big ups to him. I mean, he was in the good weather draw, but he played really well. First round leader. Shout out to Chris. He had him in, from our DFS Jags football stream. He had him first round leader. Basically bankrolled his week for the week. And I mean, JT. I give him all the credit in the world. He played great. I can't take anything away from him. That the shots that he hit in the playoff, the shots that he hit in regulation, he did what he needed to do to sneak into a playoff, and he took it down.
Yeah, it's interesting. It feels like we're kind of going through a bit of a transition where we've got this, I don't know, potential passing of the guard, where you've got guys like, Dustin and Brooks and Rory, and it feels like, this generation of guys, which they're not that much younger, but, you go 5-6 years, you've got like JT and Spieth, and then right after these guys, you've got, your Will Z's and your Scotty Schefflers, and it feels like those guys are kind of pushing out. And now we've got this new crop of guys that are coming in. And maybe it's just the recency bias, right? Even Hideki, who's been around, Hideki's in his early 20s. And, here we are talking about him potentially being kind of one of the old guard as well, too. Yeah. But, it was great TV. I enjoyed it despite, all the anguish that you and I felt over betting in DFS. It was a great tournament. And I had even commented to, in our chat that we had, I'm like, what if I told you the winning score is going to be -6 is what I had called? Who wins this tournament? And we were kind of all over the board in the people that we had picked. I mean, a couple of us had said Fitz, and it worked out where if you could just hold it together over 18 holes, that you were going to have a chance to win that tournament. And, JT, credit to him, to your point, he played great down the stretch. He didn't make any big mistakes. He just kept plotting and plotting and plotting. And, eventually it ended up winning him the tournament.
Yeah. Mito had that putt on 17 that literally came up one roll short. So me and Mike were just talking about that. If that goes in and he has a 2-stroke lead going into 18, probably doesn't hit driver there. Even with a 1-stroke lead, I'm not really sure why he's hitting driver there. I guess he was so comfortable with the driver. I get it. I mean, he hit the ball immaculately off the tee all week, but the swing was just weird. Like, it looked like he was trying to hit the Scotty Scheffler like fade for some reason, and the water comes into play. He said he wasn't even thinking about the water, and I just think he got super nervous. I think he was like, his stomach probably was in butterflies, probably like on the verge of like shitting his pants almost, like, and he just like makes a bad swing off the tee. And even when he makes the bad swing off the tee and hits in the water, I was telling Mike, I was like, look, even at this angle, you're a professional golfer. All you got to do is just hit the green, give yourself a chance at making par. And even if you make bogey here, you're still in a playoff and you still have hope.
Yeah,
but it's a bad third shot after taking a drop and can't get it up and down for bogey, and just ends his day. But he took it in stride. I mean, I saw his interview afterwards with Amanda Balionis, and he was like, I mean, good for him for being able to like at least speak to the media afterwards. And he looked like he was in good spirits. And I'm sure it's going to be a topic of conversation for us later in the show whether or not we're actually going to play him again this week, because he is in the field as of now, and no word on him withdrawing, even though there's still a couple days to go. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting. One thing that wasn't really talked about because of everything that happened with Mito down the stretch and the drama on 18 was actually the playoff itself. I mean, how did you feel about the 3-hole playoff? We're so used to these 1-hole sudden death playoffs. And then, obviously for the PGA Championship, we've got a 3-hole aggregate playoff. I'll be honest with you, I kind of liked it. Just because, it doesn't – when you're in the sudden death piece of it, there is so much that hangs on every single shot. And I understand the drama there. But again, having to hold it together for 3 holes, that's a totally different like emotional roller coaster these guys have to ride. And I kind of enjoyed watching them kind of duel it out for 3 holes. The fact that JT birdies it, and then there's still an opportunity going into the last hole for, Will Z to hit a good shot and potentially stick one close. Obviously, it didn't happen that way. But, I'd have to say I kind of liked the 3-hole aggregate playoff as a change of pace. I don't know if I'd necessarily want to see that every single week on the PGA Tour, but it was nice to get a break from the sudden death aspect that we're just so used to seeing in every one of the tournaments.
Yeah, I like that format in majors. I don't need to see it every week on the PGA Tour, but in majors, I think that's a good idea. And then the best thing about that was that the 3 holes that we got were like amazing holes. Like it was a par 5, holes. Par 5, a drivable par 4, and then a really tough hole in 18. So we had 2 easy holes, a tough hole. So like the way it worked out, the way it shook out, like those are the 3 holes that were perfect for a playoff. So. It's just one of those situations where, I mean, we don't see it that often because it's a 3-hole, it's a 3-hole playoff, and it's a nice thing to see. I enjoyed it. I really liked it. It gave everyone a good shot to win after 3 holes, and with Will Z, birding the first par 5 and then JT stuffing a wedge in there to birdie the par 5. At that moment, JT looked so on point, and then the drive on 17 was immaculate, and he just drove the green and made birdie, which ended the tournament basically.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I enjoyed it. Feel all the same emotions that you felt. I really liked it. We've actually got a question here on the chat about why I would take Rahm over JT. And right, hindsight's 2020. But that lineup that I had built with Fitz and Mito and Will Z and Cam Young, it was so chalky. I had to do something to try and change it up. So, we've talked about this before. For me, if I'm going to fade chalk, I like doing it in areas where I think I had the best opportunity for a guy to make the cut. And of course, the top of the board feels like the best place to do it. Again, in hindsight, probably a terrible decision, especially because they were both in the bad wave. But, hey, live and learn, man. That's why we do this. If Rahm comes through on Sunday, and even being out of contention, if he goes out and shoots 4 or 5 under, that lineup probably still moves up the board because I had basically an ownership break because so many people had gone with Rory or JT versus Rahm. So again, it could have played out a number of ways. It played out the way it did. Obviously didn't cash a big ticket, but the nice thing is the process, like we keep mentioning this, the process is
absolutely.
We're circling on the guys on our cards, the guys are playing in DFS, every one of these guys, right, in the modeling that we're predicting, the guys that are scoring high, they're the guys that are, in it. And like we've seen a couple of times in these majors here as of late, the chalk is making it through. So you've got to find areas where you can be different, where you can pivot and take a guy at some lower ownership to give yourself a chance to advance in these tournaments. So that's the long drawn out answer to that question.
Yeah, one thing I'll say is if we have any fans out there that actually tailor our picks and follow us, I'll tell you what. I mean, every week we're giving you a sweat on Sunday. Like, I mean, at least some sort of sweat we're giving you. Like, I mean, 100%. you may not enjoy losing all these bets, but at least you got something to look forward to on a Sunday. Like before I cashed Casey last week, we had a string of runner-ups. Obviously, this tournament we had multiple runner-ups and third place finishes. So we can't say that at least we're completely out of the tournament on Thursday or Friday. And if by some chance we are, like if all our bets are dead on Friday after the cut, we'll tweet out a live bet or two that we like
Yep.
and give you something a little crack on the weekend. And that's the beauty of DFS golf, man. You get 4 days of crack, and it's great because it's way better, in my opinion. It's the best sport to golf to bet, the best sport to play DFS on, because in football you just have 1 day basically. Basketball is just like 1 day at a time. Baseball is 1 day at a time. For golf, you get 4 days of it. You get a Friday sweat, you get a Sunday sweat. It's great. And then even if you're out of it, you can play Showdown and try those one day sweats, and you'll see you can even cash big in that. Like Tambo cashed 100K last week on Friday Showdown. So just grind it out, trust the process. I feel like a big win's coming for one of us, and hopefully we can hit a big ticket and hit a big win this week. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Speaking of this week, we've got another pretty good tournament. It's the one thing we talked about, and this really goes back a few weeks now, is since the PGA has reshuffled how things have gone out, these tournaments that fall in these odd weeks before and after majors, in these stretches where it's kind of in between, we're getting very good fields. And, we go to the 2022 Charles Schwab Challenge from Colonial. Colonial's been one of the longest courses being played on the PGA Tour. It's kind of interesting. It's a par 70. It's 7,200 yards. It's bent grass greens. It's in Texas, in Fort Worth. We were just there. We're coming from Tulsa, so it's close proximity. And the field's fantastic. Last year's winner, 2021, Jason Kokrak. And what we find with Colonial is that it's a little bit odd. It's a shorter course. It's a par 70, 7,200 yards, but a lot of the yardage is kind of baked into par threes. There's one really long par 5 that's basically impossible to reach into unless you absolutely mash one off the tee. And so what we find here is it really brings in a wide variety of guys who can win here, right? Nas won here. Kokrak's won here. Spieth has inarguably the best track record of anybody. Chris Kirk's won here. There's just so many different guys that are in play at this course that it makes it very exciting. It also means that you get some good odds, but that it's also a little bit more difficult to handicap in terms of what you like and where you go with your DFS plays and your bets. For me this week in the model, I'll be leaning super heavy on approach like I do every week. I will be pivoting. We've been going driving distance here. It feels like the last 4 or 5 weeks in a row. And this week I'll be focusing on good drives, driving accuracy. I'm really keen on that wedge distance, that 125 to 175 range, which is where the vast majority of the approach shots are coming into these greens. Like I said, not very long par 4s. And so par 4 scoring on 350 to 400 yards holes, I think will be extremely important this week. And so all the modeling and scoring that we reference is based off of the model built using these key stats. When we jump to the top of the board, above $10,000, some very, very familiar names to what we've seen the last few weeks here. Obviously, Scotty Scheffler, fresh off a missed cut. Justin Thomas, fresh off the win. Colin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth, Will Zalatoris, and Victor Hovland, a star-studded 10,000 and above range. For me, kind of like you mentioned it with Mito. I mean, what do you do with Will Z? We're in Texas. He's very, very accurate with the driver, despite the fact that he hits, a pretty long ball. But, is the mental fatigue of going what he went through on Sunday, how do you think that affects him this week?
That's a really good question. We obviously don't know how it affects everyone differently. What is the major hangover? For all these guys. I mean, for Scotty Scheffler, who missed a cut last week, is he going to come back with a vengeance? For Justin Thomas, who won the event, is he going to have a little bit of a hangover? We just don't know. I mean, all these guys played last week. You have to kind of just. I mean. Maybe for JT and Will Z, you can maybe lighten the load a little bit, but for the guys that weren't in contention on Sunday, I think you just kind of forget about last week. This is not like it's a long trek from Tulsa to Fort Worth here. It's a pretty short trek, so it's not like they're tired or anything like that. So it's a situation where you just gotta kind of just kind of put it out of your mind, I think. I mean, these guys are professional golfers. They're young. They're so talented. They're ready to play golf again. There's obviously questions about JT withdrawing from this week, and he literally put out a statement earlier today and said he is teeing it up this week. Like, he wants to keep the ball rolling. He wants to stay hot. I mean, it's only where are we at? May 23rd right now. It's only it's less than a month till the U.S. Open. I mean, they want to get some reps in before the U.S. Open. So. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough thing to decide on. The guy up here that's obviously going to get all the ownership, deservedly so, is Jordan Spieth.
Yeah.
His track record is immaculate here. A bunch of runner ups, a bunch of top tens. He's pretty much done everything at this course, besides win. Let's see. We have a question here. It says, "Do you see ownership numbers swing based on results from the last week, i.e. top finishers get an ownership boost and vice versa?" So that's a good question. Back in the day, it actually was pretty important. Like if somebody won, they would get super high ownership, or somebody came in the top 5 would get super high ownership. If somebody missed the cut, they'd be super low ownership. But over the last couple of years, the DFS community has actually gotten a lot sharper, and missed cuts don't mean anything anymore. I mean, you will see, just the perfect example is 2 weeks ago, Will Zalatoris missed the cut at the Byron Nelson on the number, and then he was one of the chalkiest guys last week of the PGA Championship. So people are not scared of missed cuts anymore. They're not scared of somebody coming in the top 5. They're not scared to fade that guy. So it's one of those situations where you just got to kind of decide, get your leverage based on ownership projections, and take it from there. But as I was saying before, the guy up here at the top that's going to get all the ownership is Jordan Spieth. He was in the tournament he played the weekend last week. He played all right, but his course history here is, immaculate. He was runner up last year to Kokrak. It's a tough fade, to be completely honest with you, with Spieth up here. I know it's early on a Monday, but unsurprisingly, the lowest owned guys in this range on a Monday evening are JT and Will Z, just because of that ownership hangover. But I'm not going to be scared to go back to them, to be completely honest with you. I think this course is perfect for both of them. It's basically I didn't get a chance to talk about the course at all, but this course is very similar to last week's course. It's the same guy who designed the course. It's basically like a Southern Hills light kind of. If last week was Torrey Pines South, this week is Torrey Pines North. It's an easier version of last week's course, a little bit shorter. The scoring is going to be a little bit better, a little bit more of a birdie fest, so you can maybe go towards guys that make birdies a little bit better. But yeah, it's going to be a tough fade for me up here with Spieth. I don't think I can do it. I think I'm probably going to have to eat the chalk with him up here. But I'll definitely go back to JT and Will Z up here, especially if they're going to be low owned. I think it's a good spot to go back to them and get some leverage.
Yeah, I mean, JT's probably the most interesting here in that, what we've seen from him in the past is when he gets hot, he kind of goes on runs, right? When he wins a tournament, he'll rack up a bunch of top tens, a bunch of top fives. And obviously, he's one of the few elites in the game that can do that. And so I think if you're getting JT at significant ownership discount, you have to give that a hard look. Will Z is a little bit different to me. And again, I'm playing, Monday morning quarterback here a little bit from a psychological perspective, but him and Mito both, it's going to be very difficult for me to insert them in the DFS lineups, just with all the mental fatigue of what they went through. These are young guys. Obviously, Will Z's been in this spot a couple of times. It is a familiar territory, right? He is a Texas guy. He's from here. This is in his backyard. It's in Fort Worth. But I think for me, where I'll end up is I'll probably end up on Hovland. I like Hovland a lot this week. I love him in a bounce back spot. And then I think I will be sprinkling Spieth and Thomas evenly into lineups from the top of the board. I think Hovland will probably end up being my most owned guy from this area in terms of where I put him in the lineups. And he'll probably be a bet for me as well. I think this is a good spot for him. He's kind of coming in under the radar. And I like where he's at. Will Z's probably a fade, and Scheffler more for his course history at this track. I think he's played this course twice on the PGA Tour. He's missed the cut once and finished T55 or something in a previous rendition. So not the best course fit for him. With all that being said, he is the number one player in the world. And anytime you're talking about fading a guy who is the best player on the planet, that can be a dangerous recipe.
Yeah. For Scotty, he deserves that price tag still. He's the number one player in the world, but I think he has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder after last week, missing the cut at the PGA. I wouldn't mind going back to him, but like you said, he doesn't have the greatest course history here. But that's a different guy. I mean, last year he's not the same Scotty Scheffler as this year, so
Totally agree.
I could understand that. The guy that we didn't talk about here is Colin Morikawa. He has good history here as well. He should have won this tournament a couple years ago. Yeah, when the first tournament coming out of the COVID break, it was down to him and Daniel Berger and Xander, and he missed this short little tap in putt to basically like extend the playoff, and should have won that tournament, to be honest with you. And this course suits him well, especially at a course where length is not important. Accuracy is more important, and iron play is very important here. There's no one else you'd rather want than Colin Morikawa. So him and JT are the two best iron players in the world. We already know that. It's not a secret. So if you're looking towards approach play, if you're looking for tee to green play on a shorter course than last week, Colin Morikawa. I mean, that's a good leverage spot. He's going to be lower owned than Spieth. I mean, anyone basically around Spieth is going to be a good pivot in this situation. I could see Scheffler's ownership getting steamed up a little bit, but it's kind of pick your poison up here. It's like whoever you want to play up here. It's the guy that if you're going to eat the chalk with Spieth, don't if he comes in like 25% owned, don't play 25% Spieth. Go all in. Go like 50% Spieth, 60% Spieth. Go overweight on him so you at least gain some leverage on him. It's kind of dumb to just kind of be even the field with Spieth. Either fade him completely or go super overweight on him. So that's my suggestion for up here. Obviously, you guys do what you want. Build your lineups how you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's tough to argue with Spieth, especially, on the Mayow show today, he brought up the course comp with Pebble Beach. Yeah. And if you look RBC Heritage as well too, but with Pebble Beach, if you look at the leaderboards, the guys who've done well there, you'll see a lot of the same names for guys who've played well at this course. It's a completely different setup, but for whatever reason, maybe it's the ranges guys hit from or what it demands from you to do off the tee or from approach shots. We tend to see similar guys on both leaderboards. So, your Hoagies, your Woodlands, your Spieths, these guys just tend to play well at those courses. So I can understand all the loves for Spieth. And if you're going to play him, you just got to hope the putter flips. I mean, it's amazing enough to try and say that, but we're in a weird season where Cam Smith led the field in tee to green play, at the PGA Championship, and Jordan Spieth couldn't hit a putt to save his life. And, that's just the weird spot that we're in right now in golf. And, long-term, Jordan Spieth is one of the best putters on the PGA Tour, and you just hope that putter flips at some point in time. Again, it's a home game for him. There's a lot of positives. And to your point, I think if you're going to go in full bore, go in totally overweight. If the field's going to play him in 30%, be 35%. Because if he hits, you want to make sure you got that leverage on everybody that you're playing against.
Yep. All right. Before we go to the 9Ks, can I answer this other question in the chat right here?
100%.
Anadev said, do you play your AM, PM wave distributions differently for different size buy-ins? It's a good question. So first of all, you have to, you have to make sure there is an AM, PM wave distribution. You don't want to just make something up. You got to look at the weather. And if you believe that there is, I'll just use this last week as an example. In the bigger size field tournaments, with the lower buy-in, like the $25 Millie Maker, even though we knew that there was going to be a wave advantage, it wasn't that much of if you looked at the stats from the field, only I think 8% of the field went full AM PM on their lineups. So it wasn't that huge of a distribution change, but in the $4,444 Millie Maker, it was closer to like 35% that went full AM PM. So that just basically tells us that there's more of a general public playing the smaller field, the smaller buy-in tournaments, as opposed to the bigger buy-in tournaments. The bigger buy-in tournaments are more professional like players that pay attention to this kind of stuff. So that they are going to be playing that wave advantage if that information is out there. So if you're going to play in the higher dollar tournament and you are planning on doing that AM PM lineup, you got to get a little bit different, because everyone's going to be playing Rory like they did last week. Everyone's going to be playing Will Z and Cam Young. Like, you got to get different. And the perfect example last week was when I was looking at the lineups for the guys that played the AM PM wave draw. There were people, the professional guys were fading Noren, who was like a super popular pick, and they're going to Davis Riley, who ended up being like 5 to 8% owned, and that's what you need to do to get different for those. But if you're playing the smaller dollar ones and you're going full AM PM, you can get chalky and stuff like that because your overall leverage is in that draw, because not the entire contest is doing that. Very little a bit of the contest is doing that. So that's the long drawn out answer to that question. Yes, it's different, but if you're going to play the higher dollar stuff, you still have to get different in your lineups. That's it.
Great answer, dude. I subscribe to everything that you just said there. And, like we talked about prior to last week, it ended up working out the right way, where if you were on the right side of the weather draw, it made a huge difference for guys that made the cut and how they scored. So from that perspective, if you can find an advantage, to your point, you got to take it. You got to go ahead and take it. Dropping down into the 9Ks, we've got a good group of guys here. Burns, Homa, Answer, Sungjae M, Finau, and Berger. Berger is a prior winner of this event. Finau's got great course history. We're seeing Sungjae M for the first time in a while. We know that he went into COVID protocol while in South Korea. What we don't know is if he actually had COVID or if he was stuck in protocol. Abe Answer, who has played well at this course, and is playing fairly well coming into this tournament. He had a good showing at the PGA Championship last week. Max Homa, who recently was a winner here. And, of course, Sam Burns, who is king of upside, but as of late hasn't played great. My gut is people are probably going to fade Burns, even though, he should set up well here. I feel like, again, this is a Monday. It's super early, very difficult to hedge or know what ownership projections are going to look like. I know you've got some projections going into this, but I feel like Answer and probably Berger, maybe Finau is probably where people end up, just because of the price tag on Finau and Berger and, of course, the course history. But it feels like Answer's probably going to catch the most steam because he's probably playing the best of everybody in this group.
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing I can probably, even though it's a Monday, I can probably tell you for sure is that Sungjae is going to be the lowest owned guy in this range. I don't think he's going to get steamed up at all, just because we don't really know where his game's at. I don't think Sungjae is. The guy plays golf every day. Like, even though he got COVID protocol, I'm sure he was still playing golf. I don't think he's rusty or anything like that. I don't think he's unhealthy. I think he's fine. So I think Sungjae is probably a good leverage play in this situation.
Totally agree.
But it's going to be a first for me, Tony. I cannot believe I'm saying this because I never do it, but I think I'm going to play some Max Homa this week, man. I just I never get there with him, but I cannot deny the fact that he has been playing absolutely wonderful golf. I was looking at his numbers recently, and the guy, his approach game is just phenomenal. He gains on approach every single time he tees it up. And like we just talked about, this is a tournament where you want that approach play. So I think he's going to be my highest owned guy in this range. I really like him this week. I like the course setup for him. It, like we said, like an approach style course. So I think this is going to be the first time I do it. I can't remember the last time I played Max Homa, but I'm going to play Max Homa this week on DraftKings. I like the play. I like the pivot off of Abraham Answer from Max Homa. I think right now at this very moment, even though Answer played well last week, I think Homa is the overall better play, just because Answer, even though he played well last week, I just feel like he never really gets there. And if he gets there, he beats me this week. But I think I'm going to go above Answer and go to Homa and maybe some Burns, and then below to, if I'm going to go leverage wise, to M. Finau and Berger, I'm not really sure about. Obviously, Finau has good course history here. He's just been playing bad, man. We say it all the time with Tony Finau, even though sometimes he gets hot a little bit, like he did in Mexico a few weeks ago. But overall, this season he's been playing pretty bad. I think out of those two, I'd rather go to Berger just because he has the win here, and I think if we're going to use the Pebble Beach comp, then Daniel Berger is a perfect type of guy to go to in this situation.
Yeah, I mentioned it. Berger's a former winner here. He's won at Pebble Beach. Obviously, we just witnessed him play absolutely terrible at the PGA Championship, so I feel like a lot of steam may be out of those sails. The one thing that I'm not sure about is I know that Berger's been battling like little injuries here and there, so I'm curious about his health going into this. But let's just say Daniel Berger's 100%. You got to think the setup is perfect. Again, it's a familiar place where he's won before. He's won at a concourse course. So I love Berger this week. I'm with you on Im as well too. I really like Sung J M, especially if I can get him at low ownership. This is a guy who was coming in with a ton of steam into the PGA Championship until he went into COVID protocol. So I love that. I'm probably going to fade Answer merely for the fact that, he's kind of been like Finau, where it's just been okay, and every now and then he has kind of a flash week. He shows up like he did last week. The stats are trending better. Where he makes his money is hitting fairways. He's pretty good with a wedge in his hand. But, when we start getting into, Abe Answer at, 15 to 20% ownership, that's when I pivot other places. I love the call on Homa. I'm not sure it's the greatest setup for him in terms of course fit, but he's been playing great. I mean, you talked about he's number 3 in approach in this field over the last 24 rounds. He's number 1 in strokes gained off the tee in this field over that same period of time. So there's a lot to love with Homa. You just got to hope that the off the tee game becomes something that he can leverage, and he can take advantage of his distance because he is the power player. I mean, very similar when Kokrak won here last year. It's the same game plan for how Max Homa ends up winning at this place that Jason Kokrak basically laid out last year.
Yeah, I like that. I agree with everything you just said. That's a good comparison in the situation with Max Homa to Jason Kokrak last year. I think if I remember right, Kokrak was in the 8Ks last year also when he won this tournament. So
Yep.
Obviously you're paying a little bit more of a price here with Max Homa, but I think it's worth it. His obviously he's coming off of a win a couple weeks ago. He's been playing really good golf this year. 2-time winner already this year. So definitely like Max Homa this week, and I think he's definitely going to be my highest owned play this week. The thing with Answer, I get it. I get why people are liking him, but like you said, like a chalky Abraham Answer at 9,300 just doesn't sit well in my stomach. So I'd rather go to the guys above him or below him.
I totally agree. I mean, when we drop down into this next range, the 8Ks, there's some very good options there. To me, Answer's probably a little overpriced, but looking at the $8,000 guys, you've got Gooch at the top of the board. We drop down, we've got a couple former winners in Jason Kokrak and Kevin Na. Bubba Watson, obviously, off of his Saturday at the PGA Championship, is garnering a bunch of steam right now. And then, the big question mark, Bryson DeChambeau sitting there. Nobody's really talking about him. The opportunity for him to show up, get something under his belt before the U.S. Open. I think, again, this doesn't seem like the best fit for him from a course fit perspective. But, 2 years ago, he finishes in third and just misses the playoff. So, he's the kind of guy when you talk about that elite level game where he can kick it into the next gear. For me in this range, he and Mito are probably the two biggest question marks. I kind of mentioned it off the jump. I don't know if I can go back to Mito after everything that happened. But again, I mean, he's a guy that played at SMU. He's very familiar with the Dallas area. He's got a bunch of people there. This is a home game for him, very similar to Will Z. I mean, where do you put Mito in terms of, whether he's a good bet or he's a good DFS play this week?
That's a good question. I think with Mito, it's going to be one of two things. He's either going to be Francesco Molinari and completely fall apart after his loss to the Masters, or he's gonna come back with with a chip on his shoulder and keep playing the Mito Pro golf that we know. Obviously, we're paying a huge price bump here from 6,700 to 8,600 for him this week. So you have to also take that into consideration. Does he belong in the 8,000s? With these other names that, renowned tour winners that are around him. I don't know. I don't think he does. I think I would have liked more if he was priced in the 7,000s this week, but we're paying that premium this week. So the 8,600 price tag is a little scary for me. I mean, I'm going to play Mito. I play him every week. I trust his ability to mentally be there. So I'm definitely going to go there. But my guy this week, my winner of the tournament, is in this range. He's going to do it. First time winning on tour. I'm going to him. He's my boy. He's one of my favorite golfers ever. Tommy Fleetwood is going to get the job done this week. He's been playing absolutely phenomenal golf over the last couple months. He's going to do it. He's going to get his first PGA Tour win this week. He played so good last week, and if we're going to go to a course where approach play is important and we're thinking it's Southern Hills Light, why not go to Tommy Fleetwood here and have him win a tournament?
This feels like if there's an event, this style of event is one that sets up well for him. He's pretty accurate off the tee. You mentioned his approach game is some of the best on tour. The guy's, he's absolutely immaculate with a wedge in his hand, where par is a good score. This is the kind of course where you're going to get scores kind of in the, the mid, like 10, 11, 12, maybe into the low teens. It's not going to be a total score fest. It feels like a good spot. For me with Fleetwood, I got to see it. I got to see it close before I can jump in. He's been around it so long, but again, he's playing absolutely phenomenal right now. And I can't argue with the call. I've been playing Taylor Gooch basically every single week, and he hasn't been letting me down. Like I'm going to continue to go there, especially because I think he's a bit of a forgotten man, especially at the top of this range. The other guy that I like is a guy that you've mentioned quite a few times is Davis Riley, man. Davis Riley's playing absolutely phenomenal. And I think in this range, because so many people are going to go to Na and Bubba Watson and Webb Simpson.
Bubba's a WD, by the way.
Okay. So that's going to shake some things up there.
Yeah. So Bubba's a WD. Bryson's a question mark because he could still easily be a WD by Thursday. But Bubba put out on social media earlier today that he's actually been playing on a torn meniscus for the last 2 weeks. So he has to get surgery, I think, or something. But he's going to be out of it for the next month. And I don't think he's going to play he's definitely going to miss the U.S. Open also. So Bubba is out. So do not play Bubba in your lineups.
Yep. We actually had a couple questions coming here that I want to make sure we answer. The first one was about ownership projections, right? Like how do those get calculated? How do these sites produce these things? For lack of, intimate knowledge about how they're calculated, it's basically as players are selected, people are building lineups, they're favoriting golfers through many of these tools like Fantasy National or through sites like Rick Run Good site. And so what the sites do is calculate how many people are selecting these golfers and building lineups with them. Whether or not they're close, it really ranges from week to week. It's the best projections that we have. It's a little bit like the 5-3 odds when trying to figure out which states are going to end up voting a different way. Basically, it's for lack of a better term, it's like polling. We don't know what's going to happen, but some data is better than none. And to Rick's point about the kinds of folks that are using these sites, they tend to be more invested golfers. If you're paying for analytics and data, you're more invested in tournaments. You're probably playing higher stakes. You're in it every single week. And so you're going to have a better idea of what people end up doing because it's just a better educated group of folks that are putting these guys into lineups.
Yeah. Everything Tony just said, and to the second part of your questions, are projections usually close to the actuals? Yeah, they actually are. I mean, they're not obviously exact, but there's obviously sometimes there's guys that come in, that are way off. But for the most part, I would say 95% of the data is pretty accurate to the projections that we get. And I subscribe to a couple different sites, and usually those sites, their projections are pretty similar to each other, maybe a couple percentage points on and off. So if anyone is playing DFS golf and subscribing to these sites, which guys are going to be chalky, which guys are going to be the leverage spot. So yeah, I mean, it's still early on a Monday, but the site that I use, they put out projections on Monday afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon. So they put out ownership changes every single day on these guys. So usually that's why I don't usually build until Wednesday, because I like to see what those final ownership projections are and then kind of build my lineups off of that. But yeah, they are pretty accurate, to be completely honest with you. I've never seen somebody put out ownership projections and they're just completely off. They're usually pretty accurate.
Yeah, I think your comment about being able to identify and confirm chalk, that's probably where they're the most reliable, is when you start looking at ownership levels and you see guys in the 25s and 30s on these projections, they're going to end up being the chalkiest guys. So if you're playing game theory and you're wanting to pivot off certain guys to be able to differentiate your lineups when guys are super chalky, that's where they're really, really valuable.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll be off a little bit. For the best example that I can think of that was off, but it was still correct, was a couple weeks ago, or at the Mexico Open, when John Rahm was the highest owned guy on the slate. Yeah. His projected ownership on every site that I was looking at was around 30 to 35%. You knew that he was going to be the chalkiest guy on the slate. Did he come in at 35%? No, he came in at 45%. but still, he was still the chalkiest guy on the slate.
Yeah.
That's just kind of like an outlier, to be a little bit of an outlier, but we still knew that to get leverage on Jon Rahm, you either had to completely fade him or you had to play like 50% of him or like 60% of him to get leverage. So, yeah, sometimes you'll get a little bit of an outlier of that, but for the most part, it's pretty accurate.
Absolutely. And we had a question here from Greg, more of a comment about Answer, the fact that, you're paying a $9,300 price tag for a guy who's got one top 30 finish here in the last few events. It's exactly what we're talking about. The course setup this week feels like the perfect opportunity for Answer. But, to the comments that we had made when we were in the 9Ks, it just feels like we're not getting the best version of Answer, like what we've seen in previous years, right? Where he has won before, where he's contended. He just hasn't really been able to put the full slate of all of his skills together. And until I see that, I can't see going there. If Abraham Answer was 8,300 this week, I'd probably be all over him. But the fact that he's 93 and he's going to be chalky, to Rick's point earlier, it feels like the perfect fade spot for me.
Yeah. I mean, just the perfect answer to that question is Sung J M is a better golfer than Abraham Answer. We know it. Everyone knows it. And he's cheaper and going to be lower owned. I'd rather go to Sung J.
100%. Back to the 8Ks here, just to kind of round it out. For me,
sure.
It's going to be Gooch. I like Davis Riley, and I'll probably end up on Jason Kokrak as well too. Those three guys I'll have sprinkled in the lineups. It feels like no one's going to play Horschel, even though this course should set up well for him. But I don't think anybody's going there. And then again, the Mito question. I don't know where people are going to land on Mito.
I don't
right
either.
Now, if you're asking me, he's probably a fade from a DFS perspective here, but he's probably a bet for me. I just think there's, whether you come in second or you come in dead last and miss the cut, it pays the same on a bet, right? You got to win. So I think if I'm gonna end up using him, it's gonna be in an outright bet, not necessarily in DFS.
Okay, yeah, I could take that to the bank there. He's, I mean, right now I'm seeing like 6% ownership. If he's 6% owned at 8,600, I'm going to get overweight on him, which doesn't mean it's much. You don't need to get overweight on him too much. You can play 15% of him and still be double the field on him. So we'll see how the ownership percentages mature on him. But yeah, my highest owned guy in this range is definitely going to be Tommy Fleetwood. I'm definitely going to play some Davis Riley, like you said. Definitely going to play some Kokrak, like you said. I also like Kevin Na too. I think this
what's
is
not to like.
Yeah, this course, obviously, he's a past winner here. He's also this is the course where he got a 16 on a hole.
Yep.
Was it this course? Yeah.
Yeah, so he went and cut down the tree like a couple years later.
Yeah, so we've seen every version of Kevin Na at this course. I believe that he's been playing good this season, good enough to fire him up in my lineups this week. Bryson is the big question mark. Obviously, if he withdraws, don't play him. But if he plays this week, if he actually tees it up, he's going to be like 2% owned. And this, I mean, if Bryson DeChambeau at 2%, you can get leverage there if you want. He's still one of the best golfers in the world. He can tear this course apart with his driver. But am I going to play him? Probably not if he plays. I'd rather go to the guys above and below him. But it's not a bad idea to get some leverage on Bryson, who came close to playing last week. He withdrew at the last minute. So he seems like he's pretty close to teeing it up. I don't know if it's going to be this week or at the Memorial next week, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Bryson, I've seen his outright number as high as 100 and as low as like 60. I mean, if you can get him at 100-1 in this field, I mean, sprinkle $10 on him if he plays and wins. Hey, you cover yourself. If he doesn't, it's 10.
We did it last week.
Exactly same thing. Yeah, you get your money back.
We got our money back, and I took that money and I put it on other guys. And yeah, I mean, he was in the good wave last week. I like that also, but he withdrew. You get a refund and put those units on different guys, and you'll be fine.
Absolutely. All right, dropping down in the 7Ks. Very, very good range here. Obviously, the three guys probably at the top of the board here are probably going to end up being the chalkiest with Woodland, Kirk, and Harmon. HV3 played well. Munoz, my boy, I'll have some sprinkling of him. CT Pan, this course sets up well. We mentioned the comp with Pebble Beach. Tom Hoagie, a winner there, has been playing very, very good. Mav McNeely, Pebble Beach. There's just a ton of names here. Kisner, Merritt, Neesmith. All of these guys feel like they're great course fits. Even Aaron Ryan, Joel Dahlman. I feel like even though Woodland and Kirk and maybe even Harmon could end up chalky, I feel like there's so many options here that you need to define that percentage for chalk. Like chalk is probably going to be like 12% in this range, because there just are so many options for guys that are playing well. Even Justin Rose, who we've seen, who's won at this course before and has been playing better. We saw him flash last week. I'm not going there, but I could see how people could make an argument for putting him into lineups. A number of former winners here. Like I said, Kisner's in this range. Where are you going to end up, and where do you think the majority of people will end up?
That's a good question. I mean, like you said, I think the ownership is going to be really spread out in this range. I think the chalky guys are going to be like the guys you said, Kirk, especially coming off of a good week last week, and Brian Harmon, who literally has never missed a cut here. Those are going to be the top plays here. Gary Woodland was in my main lineup last week, so definitely like Gary Woodland. I'm going to go to Rose. I know you're not going to go to him, but I'm going to go to him. I think it's a good spot to go to him, man. I mean, he's been playing better. He obviously is comfortable with this course. I like him this week, and I was talking with my friend Greg, who commented, and earlier he said that Tom Hoagie might be the most mispriced guy in the field for this tournament. He's going to be chalky. I don't like his course history here, man. He's coming off 2 missed cuts the last 2 years.
It's true.
And the 2 years before that, he had a 40th and a 42nd. I'd rather take my Tom Hoagie shares and go up to Rose and Munoz, or down to Mag McNeely or Patrick Reed or Kevin Kisner or something like that. Not going to get there with Ricky Fowler, even though he played well last week. I still can't click the button. I'd rather much rather go to McNeely or somebody else. Troy Merritt, I don't mind. I mean, there's so many names in this range that I absolutely love. Ryan Palmer, this is his home course. The 7,300 is a good price tag for Ryan Palmer. Dropping down below that, in the low sevens there. Aaron Rye, like you said. KH Lee coming off of a win a couple weeks ago in Texas. Why not? Nate Lashley has been playing good golf. JJ Spawn has been playing golf. There's a lot. Lucas Herbert was in contention like all tournament last week. There are so many names in this range that, like you said earlier, I think that because there's so many names right here, and these guys are, in my opinion, like most of these guys have winning upside potentially at this tournament, just because it's one of those tournaments where I feel like a long shot could win. Sure. I think ownership in this range is in the 7Ks is going to be really spread out. So I think it's going to be pick your guys, go overweight on them. And then if there's a couple names that get steamed up later in the week, you have the option to fade them if you want. I think the names that are potentially going to get steamed up here are going to be Chris Kirk, because he played so well last week. He has good course history here. And Brian Harmon, like you said, HV3 is probably going to get a little steam also. So those names, pay attention to ownership projections. And if they, if they do get steamed up, if you think someone's going to get to 15, 16, 17%, you can automatically fade them at that point and go to someone else. Because in my opinion, there's no difference between someone like Joel Damon at 7,200 and I don't know, Christian Bezaden at 7,600. These guys are all pretty similar to me. No one really sticks out like this is a must play. Matthew Neesmith, man, if you're going to go the RBC Heritage comp, he's a great play at 7,300. There's so many names here. Just pick your guys. I mean, there's too many guys in this range for me to name that I like, because I kind of like them all, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I mean, when we get into my betting card, you'll see a bunch of these names pop up because there's a bunch of real long odds. But I do like CT Pan a lot. He's been playing great. He's if you look at his form coming in his last 3 tournaments, he's been getting better each and every week. I think he had a top 15 finish here 2 or 3 weeks ago. Love the course fit with what this course demands and what CT does well. So CT Pan's going to be heavily owned for me. A bunch of the guys that you mentioned, I'm actually surprised that you bring up your boy EVR. Is right there by Palmer.
Yeah. Are you gonna go back? I was heavy on him last week. He played like garbage, but
I know, yeah, he was terrible.
Why not? I mean, it's not a bad play. I think at that exact price at 7,300, I think I like Neesmith and maybe the other 3 guys a little bit better, like Merritt, sure. Neesmith, and Palmer a little bit better than EVR. But yeah, why not? If you want to go to him, I mean, he's 79th overall in your model, which is a little scary, which scares me a little bit. But yeah, why not?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Rye and Dahlman both. If you
Yeah.
look at Dahlman's track record here, it's like every other year he plays well, and
Hmm.
the other year he misses a cut. He missed a cut last week, so he's going to play well this week based off of that narrative. Again, course fit. I love Aaron Rye this week. Cam Davis, who played pretty good at the PGA Championship in terms of obviously he didn't finish great in terms of like where he ended up. I think he finished like 48th or something like that in the tournament. But he had flashes in that tournament, so I could see Cam Davis, if he can control the driver. Stu Cink, I think, is going to get up, especially as we get into the bottom of this range. I think he's going to start to gain some traction as we get further into the week. But the other guy for me down here that I'm interested, I'm just curious your opinion, is Grillo. Grillo's played this course great. I know that he's been trashed this year. I totally get it. But again, hit fairways, approach, like that's like prototypical Grillo. And I mean, the dude's got, I think he's made the cut 4 out of 5 years here. He finished inside the top 10 last year. Like, can you get to Grillo?
That's a tough ask. He's been playing. He's so bad, man. Like I don't know what else to say, man. Even like at least like back in the day, we would be able to rely on his
I
approach
know.
game and his tee to green game. He doesn't even have that anymore. We always know he's a bad putter, but he's been so bad. I need to see some. I mean, maybe this is a get right spot for him, maybe, but I can't get there with him. I'd rather go to like James Hahn or something like that at that spot, or David Lipsky, even, or Dylan Fratelli, who's a Texas guy. I'd rather go to those guys over Grillo, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, totally get it. Well, let's drop down
Well,
into the
before we go to the dumpster, give the fans out there, give them your two favorite plays from the 7K range, and I'll give them my two favorite plays, just so because we named everyone. So give them your two favorite plays.
7K, CT Pan, and as much as I hate to say it, it's either going to be Gary Woodland or Brian Harmon, one of those two guys. I love Woodland. Okay. I love this track here, the Pebble Beach comp. He won a U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. He's got two top team 15 finishes the last 2 years here. So I would say Woodland and CT Pan are my two favorite in this range.
Okay. I think my two favorites are going to be, I'll say Sebastian Munoz. I think he's a really good play this week. Because this is a little bit more of a birdie fest.
First round leader. Just bet him first round leader.
First round leader for sure. And I think Chris Kirk is probably going to be my second favorite play here. So definitely like Seabass and Chris Kirk, but those are probably my two favorite guys.
Yep, absolutely. Dropping down into the dumpster. Again, there's actually some pretty good options down here. We talked about the strength of this field compared to where it's been. At the top of this range is 6,900. Adam Long's coming in very, very well in terms of where he rates out in the model. He's got a couple of top 20 finishes here sprinkled in with a missed cut. Same thing for how his course history has ended up here. You've got Russell Knox from a course fit perspective, should be doing well. Pat Perez with the Pebble Beach comp, and then a bunch of other names. Like I actually love Streelman at 6,800 here. I think it's a great spot for him. I think you're getting a discount because the field is so strong. I realize that his form hasn't been, the best as of late, but if you're talking about hitting fairways, and putting a wedge in a guy's hand and watching him go to work, like that's Kevin Streelman all day. So I love Streelman as well at 6,800, dropping down a little bit. Lucas Glover continues to rate out really, really well in my model every week, and I never play him and I never find myself getting to him, but he always ends up like in the top 15 or 20 in my model, and I don't understand it. A little bit farther down the board, you could go back to your boy Barjan. He's flashed. We haven't seen Sam Ryder in a while. He's back in the lineup. You get below 6,500 and it gets ugly really fast. The only other guy that I like below 6,500 that I'll probably have a decent amount on is a guy that we end up talking about all the time, and that's Smotherman. He just, he's a model buster. The models love him. The metrics are good. He's never played this course before on tour, but he's coming in with a couple top 25 finishes. So I like Smotherman way deep on this board.
Yeah, I like Smotherman too. I like Kitayama right above him at 6,400. He's been playing great golf over the last couple months, and definitely don't mind that price on 6,400. I like the Streelman call. I didn't even see that. I played Streelman at like 8K like a month ago. Like 6,800 is a great price for him, especially at a course where length isn't that important. Why not? Let's fire some Kevin Streelman. I didn't even see his name at 6,800. I'm glad you pointed him out. I'm definitely going to play some of him. Patton Kizzire in Texas is automatic for me all the time. Yep. I always play Patton Kizzire in Texas. He, for some reason, plays really well in that state. real quick at the flat min at 6,000. That I mean, is this right? Like Adam Schenk should not be $6,000. Like that's a
Yeah.
misprice, right? Like that's not the right. I mean, he should not be $6,000, right?
I mean, you've got a guy who we've seen contend and been on leaderboards. I
Yeah.
mean, his
Like
course history isn't
why is he
great,
with
but
Martin Trainer and Eric Compton? Like he should be like 6,600 or 6,700. I
yeah,
don't
he
know.
should. He's definitely that's definitely a misprice.
Yeah, so if you're willing to stomach it and take a flyer on Adam Schenk and you're trying to play like a JT Scheffler lineup or a JT Spieth
Yeah.
lineup or something, not a bad call. I mean, 6,000 seems like a misprice for him. So I can definitely see firing up a little bit of Adam Schenk in my lineups. Let's see. I like the Lucas Glover call, Alex Smalley and Taylor Moore. Those are kind of some Corn Ferry guys that could pop. Yeah, I mean, Brandon Wu's been playing all right golf. Sahith Tagala at 6,500 is a good
Your
price.
boy.
Yeah, Bo Hostler at 6,500, Texas guy is a good price. Carlos Ortiz, a Texas guy at 6,500 is a good price. I like the 6K range this week, man. I think this is a good chance to fire up some guys that not many people, especially coming off of a major week, and it's a lot of the people that maybe won money last week or have some extra money in their DK accounts will play that don't know who any of these guys are. Good chance for us to fire up on guys that not many people know and go back to them. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any other names. Peter Malnati's been doing it a lot recently. He usually gets there and makes the cut like every week, and that's kind of all you're really asking for at 6,800. Steven Yeager, I was playing at the Byron Nelson a couple weeks ago. I mean, there's some good names down here that you can fire up in your lineups and have a little bit of confidence. Austin Smotherman at 6,300. I'm just staring at that. I'm like, that's a misprice too, in my opinion. Like, I get why he's 6,300. No one really knows him, but he's a model buster, and he his stats like line up with an ability to pop. And I mean, these are the guys that you got to nail to win a GPP. So yeah.
What about your boy? Just because he's there, $6,500. He's got good course history, but he's been just so. I mean, he's broken. But Charlie Hoffman.
Charlie Hoffman. Ah, man. Nah, I can't get there, man. I played him every week last year. I'm over. I don't need. I played enough Charlie Hoffman in my life to be okay with
You're
it.
overweight on Charlie Hoffman lifetime.
Lifetime, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I need to see something. I need to see a week where he gains in at least like 2 to 3 categories, but he bleeds strokes everywhere. He's just a broken man right now. I'd rather go to Brandon Wu. I'd rather go to Richard Bland at 6,600 or Grayson Sigg at 6,500. Much better names at 6,500 over Charlie Hoffman.
Yeah, totally agree. I'll throw one more name at you just because no one is going to play him. He's actually got decent course history, coming in with decent form, and absolutely no one will own him. That's your boy, the other Rory Sabatini, dude. The guy.
Man.
I don't. He's 4 for 5 in cuts made. He's got a couple top 10 finishes. Like, he's played well at this tournament. He's coming in pretty good. He's made a bunch of cuts in a row.
Yeah.
He looks like a total ass clown on the course, but I mean, at $6,700, I mean, and 0 ownership, I mean, he makes a cut. If he finishes T35, that's a win.
Yeah, I like that call. I mean, no one's going to own him, like you said, but for me, I mean, just the names right around him at that price are just better than him. Like,
Yeah,
Doug
Gim and Glover and Small.
Gim and Glover, yeah, those are just better plays. But if you can stomach it, if you can sit there and root for Rory Sabatini in a golf tournament, go for it. I just the guy is a clown. Like, I mean, he probably still wears his silver medal around everywhere where he goes, and I just can't get that. I can't click that name, man. It's not fun.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I can do Sabs, but there are worse plays other than Sabatini in this range. That's for sure. All right, man. Let's get into our cards for the week. For me, I'm gonna have a ton of sprinkles this week. You mentioned it. You like the 6Ks on DFS. I like the numbers in terms of the outright odds for some of these guys, and kind of like we talked about in the jump, because of the way the course is set up, it brings into play a bunch of guys. So I'm not going to go through all the names on my bombs list, but I had to throw Matthias Schwab in the
Mm-hmm.
Charles Schwab Cup Challenge. So Schwab is on the card. I like them all naughty call. There's a bunch of guys on here that are basically plotters, guys that I think are going to, have an opportunity to contend. They're probably better top 20, top 10 plays than they are outright bets, but I'll have sprinkles on them. And then my main card, like I mentioned, I love Hovland this week. I like Will as a bet. I don't know if I'll get to him in DraftKings. Love Sung Jae. I'll have Answer basically as a hedge in case he does actually show up. Going to fade him in DraftKings. He'll be on my outright card. And then really Mito and Woodland, the other two guys. Billy Horschel, I may end up flopping out. I've been kind of looking at fee now. I'm not real sure. I may cash out the Horschel ticket and go a different direction.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a card yet this week. I'll obviously tweet it out. I like your card. I think for
It's
me,
vast.
yeah, it's vast. It's fine though. I mean, it is what it is. If one of them hit and you get paid off, it's a profitable week. I think for me, I think I'm going to go to Spieth at the top. I think that's a good bet. I'm seeing
It's a smart
him.
call.
Yeah, I'm seeing him around. I'm seeing a 16-1, which isn't a bad number on him. Definitely going to bet some Tommy Fleetwood, some Kokrak, some Nas. Some of these guys I'm definitely going to go to. I'll tweet it out, later this week once I do a little bit more research. Mike said that we need Rick's guaranteed money bet back in the show. Hey man, if you want it, I'll give it to you right now. Tommy Fleetwood top 10, lock it up. That's going to be your winner this week. I don't know what the odds are, but if you got odds on it, bet it. Tommy Fleetwood top 10 this week.
It's a good call. Like we talked about, his course history is phenomenal here, or excuse me, his form coming in is phenomenal, and he's playing really good golf. And if there's a course setup where it makes sense for him to get his first PGA Tour win, this is probably the spot. So I think it's there are worse bets out there, but I love the top 10 call. I think that's smart money.
Yeah. All right. I think that's it for me this week. I'm just gonna go back to crying over yesterday and then start building and get over it by tomorrow and start building some lineups. That's my week.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we go, Greg had one more question. I use Fantasy Nashville, and I think Rick, you use Rick Run Good site for a lot of your stuff for course history and statistics, correct?
Yeah, I do that. I also have I also subscribe to Rotor Grinders and Notorious, who runs that site. He puts out a really good graphics wise that shows like everyone's results in like a pattern for the last 5 years. So I definitely like it. I like it just visually wise. It looks really good to me. Greg, I'll send you that link if you want. It's pretty easy to look at. But yeah, all sites have it. Like you just Fantasy National, it kind of gets on my nerves because to see their individual histories, you actually like have to click on their name and it opens up another tab, which gets on my nerves. But for the site that I use, it's just all laid out on like one model and it looks really good. So just whatever floats your boat at that point.
Yeah, we'll throw out the links to the different sites that we use in the comments of this video. So Greg, you'll be able to find it there. Thanks for everybody who chimed in, asked questions. We appreciate it. We love the feedback back and forth. Good luck this week. Rick and I will still be crying in our soup for a little while, but hopefully we can hit a big winner. We can take down a tournament this week, and we'll be talking about success instead of a big kick in the nuts next week.
Yeah, nothing to turn around a bad week besides like a good week this upcoming week. So let's hit a winner. Let's cash some big DK tickets and take it from there.
Absolutely. Good luck, and we will talk to you guys again next week.
All right.